Donald Trump is seeking what is known as a special master. This would be a third-party attorney who would review whether materials that the FBI seized from Mar-a-Lago could be used in a criminal investigation. CNN's Caitlin Polantz and Caitlin Collins are tracking this legal development, the first that the former president has made since his private residence was searched. Caitlin Polantz, let me start with you. What is Trump's legal team asking for in their new filing?
Well, essentially, Jake, Donald Trump and his legal team want to pump the brakes on anything that the Justice Department collected and would be going through now in this ongoing criminal investigation. So to do that, they're asking for four things. They're asking for a special master, so a third party that would be appointed by the court to make sure what is collected in that evidence is the sort of thing investigators can use as they continue investigating. He also wants to pause the Justice Department from reviewing that information. That's number two. Number three, he wants a more detailed receipt of the property that was provided to him. Now, we do know that the Justice Department, the FBI, provided two receipts to him that his lawyer signed at the end of that search when they removed 33 items, but he wants more detail about that. And four, he wants the Justice Department to return any items that they say would not be within the scope of the search warrant that would be found to be that way by this special master if it would be appointed. So those are all of the things he's asking for. He's also making some legal claims saying that his constitutional rights may be violated, that there are potentially privileged materials that had been taken out of Mar-a-Lago. But of course, Jake, we need to put some caveats in this, in that there was a hearing last week. There were lots of chances for Donald Trump's team to speak up in court. They did not do that. It has been 2 weeks since this search, since the Justice Department has had all of this evidence in their possession. And we also know that the FBI did receive many things, go through them, and their filter team was at work and even returned to Trump and his team things that they didn't need in that investigation, including 2 expired passports and a diplomatic passport for the former president. So we'll see what the judge does here. There hasn't been a response yet in court yet to this.
And Caitlin Collins, what else are you discovering in this document?
A lot, Jake. It's actually pretty detailed about their view of how all of this transpired leading up to this search of Mar-a-Lago. We should note it also reveals that the search warrant was actually signed on August 5th, that Friday before it was actually carried out at Mar-a-Lago. They're raising the question in this filing about why the search warrant was signed at 12:12 p.m. on that Friday, August 5th, and the search wasn't carried out until Monday. Of course, as Caitlin noted, we have not heard a response from the Justice Department on this matter, but they do note that. They say that Jay Bratt, who was this Justice Department official who visited Mar-a-Lago at that previously reported June 3rd meeting, was the one who arrived. He called Trump's counsel and then asked Trump's counsel to turn the cameras off at Mar-a-Lago. Of course, that's been a point of dispute. There is one really fascinating thing in this filing, Jake, and it is confirmation from Trump's legal team that they did try to pass a message along to Attorney General Garland. And on it, it says that August 11th, 3 days after this search was carried out, Trump's counsel called Jay Bratt, who is this Justice Department official who's really leading this investigation, and asked him to pass along this message from Trump to Attorney General Garland. I'm going to read it in full, Jake, because it says, President Trump wants the Attorney General to know that he has been hearing from people all over the country about the raid. If there was one word to describe the mood, it is angry. The heat is building up. The pressure is building up. Whatever I can do to take the heat down, to bring the pressure down, just let us know. Jake, previously officials had not confirmed, people around Trump had not confirmed that he did try to get a message to Attorney General Garland. They are confirming it in this filing, which is just remarkable in and of itself, really, Jake. The other thing I want to note is that it's been 2 weeks since the search of Mar-a-Lago happened. There had been some disagreement in Trump's orbit, I was told by sources, over whether or not to seek this special master and how quickly to do it, with some criticism that they had kind of missed the window. They should have done it sooner rather than later. Of course, it is now 2 weeks since the search happened, and they are taking their first legal action here. It does show that there is some disagreement behind the scenes over what is the best strategy going forward and coalescing around a singular strategy here, but clearly this is now a decision they are making. They do have one thing in mind here, Jake. Having this search for a special master could potentially slow things down, since they are asking investigators to pause their work until a special master, this third-party attorney, would be appointed.
Let's bring in the CNN senior legal analyst, Elie Honig, as well. Elie, what do you think of Trump's chances in terms of succeeding in this filing and getting a special master to be appointed to go through all of the material collected at Mar-a-Lago before the Justice Department takes whatever they find relevant.
Well, Jake, on the special master request, I think Donald Trump has a fairly good chance of prevailing. It's a reasonable request. It's actually not unprecedented. The idea is, let's get an outside third party. Typically, you'd have a retired federal judge come in and review these documents and make sure that there's nothing that's attorney-client privilege, potentially executive privilege. If there is, that special master will hold on to it and it will not pass through to prosecutors. There is precedent for this, I think most memorably, when DOJ did a search warrant on Michael Cohen in 2018. There was a special master appointed, a former federal judge from the Southern District of New York, Barbara Jones. She went through the documents. She only passed along to prosecutors those documents that were not privileged. So as Caitlin notes, though, this will take time if the request is granted. It probably should have been made, the request, a couple weeks ago, shortly after the search was made, because for all we know, DOJ is already going through that information. But this is not an unusual request, and I think it's fairly well grounded.
And you heard Caitlin just report that Trump's legal team tried to contact Attorney General Garland with this message about how angry people are across the country. What did you make of that?
Well, it's wildly inappropriate at a minimum. Look, you are not supposed to, you are not allowed to try to influence a prosecution in any way if you're a subject or a target or any person. And reaching out to the Attorney General himself with the kind of message, whether it sounds like they're trying to bring the temperature down or not, is really inappropriate and I think ill-advised.
I just want to bring in Caitlin for a second. We do hear this a lot, Caitlin, from Trump allies along the lines of, you know, the FBI better not do this. There's going to be, like, bad things are going to happen. Sometimes it's a vague threat. Sometimes it's pretty direct.
I also think an interesting aspect of this is the political argument that they're making in this filing, Jake, which is they say Trump, who has not yet declared that he is running for office in 2024, is the clear frontrunner in the Republican presidential primary and in the 2024 general election, should he decide to run. They're also bringing the midterm elections into this, Jake, basically trying to make this argument that what Trump has been saying since the day that he confirmed this search, which is his claim that it's politically motivated. They cite the press conference by the Attorney General, and basically they're saying, for example, let me read you part of this, Jake, just to show you the argument that Trump's legal team is making. On August 8th, 2022, in a shockingly aggressive move and with no understanding of the distress that it would cause most Americans, roughly 24 special agents of the FBI directed by the Justice Department went to Trump's home. So that is how they're framing it, Jake. That is the right off the bat in this motion that they're filing, their first legal motion we are getting from the Trump team. They are trying to say that this is a politically motivated attack against Trump and saying that it's because he's the front runner. That has kind of been their strategy all along, and what they're using in a public court of opinion, certainly, Jake, as they've been making both of their legal arguments on television. This is the first time they're actually making an argument in a court filing. And as Caitlin noted, they've had opportunities to do so previously and have not yet done so.
And Ellie, Congressman Dan Crenshaw, Republican of Texas, was on State of the Union yesterday, and he made a similar argument about just the inherently political nature of this search. Take a listen.
When you're going after an ex-president who may run again, that this is automatically political. You cannot separate the legal aspects of this from the political aspects of it. You can't. And it doesn't seem to me like they've acted responsibly as a result of that.
Ellie, what did you think when you heard Congressman Crenshaw say that?
Well, Jake, I'm not sure Dan Crenshaw has a basis to say that DOJ has not acted responsibly here. He, like all of us, has not yet seen the affidavit. But I do think he has a good point that this prosecution or investigation is inherently political, and prosecutors like to and rightly strive to operate separate and apart from politics. But prosecutors also operate in reality. We can't operate in a vacuum as much as we strive for that at DOJ. And I think he's right that the closer we get to the midterms in the 2024 presidential election cycle, the more fraught, the more potentially difficult it gets to charge, to investigate, to indict, potentially to convict anyone, never mind somebody who may well be the front runner. I think that's just reality.
Yeah, although I would also observe that if they decided not to investigate potential law breaking because of the political dimension, that is also a political decision.